So I've switched the name of the theory that I was working on before from fractal math to something more akin to maybe fractal evolutionary numerology. Now I know all of the justified complaints with numerology because they are, for the most part, justified. For the most part. I'm going to try to qualify that a little bit. You know, if you put yourself into the context of the people that made this, say, 10,000 years ago, they lived in a world with a worldview that believed everything was cyclical, everything was absolute, everything was constructed perfectly divinely without change, essentially. And so, in that sense, they were trying to come up with certain ways of explaining the world that could be parsed up, that could be particularized in a way that made life easier. I could tell you about something through maybe mathematics, and that, what we call numerology, that has contained within it sort of meaning. Because there are these things that we relate to with meaning, and they have certain, you can describe them through numbers to some degree. And doing that, it's a very quick way of expressing meaning if you use those numbers. Now, with the scientific revolution, there was the justified move to better map natural reality, and with that has a whole other worldview of sort of a mechanistic universe. So, this kind of meaning, numbers correlative with meaning goes out the window because the explanatory power of numbers related to and useful for mechanizing things was so much greater, in the sense that you could dramatically change the world using these numbers for that power. So these are in a sense magic things that in the sense that they are correlative with our worldviews. Anyway, so in this sense, I'm using these numbers along with the baggage of science and the good extraordinary benefits of science that it brings. It is in itself what sort of brought the evolutionary worldview into existence, or it was piggybacked on that. So this fractal evolutionary numerology has its roots in certain regards in the more ancient theories, because there's many parallels. So if you look at number 1, it is, I would say, the sort of universal ground from which all things come. Very many parallels to the traditional sense. I should also note before I get too far into this that this is all paradoxical in the sense that when I say a number, the other numbers are contained in them, and that's the fractal nature of things, right? I mean, when you talk about fractals, you're always saying that this is contained in that, which is contained in that. So there's never any perfect parsing. It's never really absolutely concrete when I say it. So I'm using these numbers as sort of broad principles of systems, but it's never perfect because it's always paradoxically not the case too. So the ish factor very much applies here. Anyways, 1 is sort of from which all things come. It's the most primitive. It's the ground. Universally connectivity. And so, like, in a certain way, what the Buddhas are tapping into, for example, when they have their enlightenment experience, they're going back to that call to ground, but they're doing it with what I'll talk about, number 3. They're using 3 to analyze 1. But the 1 is, you can't really parse it. It's the ground in some mysterious way. And our science would say it's something like, the Big Bang. And it has, in that way, a very kind of masculine orientation in that it's constant. But it's not. I guess, yeah, I would say it is, though. More masculine than feminine, but it is also the radical embrace. So, but number two is the more the polarity. It's a duality. Um, it's the masculine and the feminine. So where I would say the masculine is the one, the feminine is more two-ish, because there's a polarization there. There's uh, a friction in a certain sense, the dance of two, but it embraces the one, or the one embraces the two, both in a certain sense. But it's an evolutionary step forward, because you couldn't have the two without the one, but the two comes from the one. So it's more complex, but less foundational. The one's more the one is absolutely foundational. So this is a tendency in the universe: is the further you go in the numbers, the more complex you get, but the less foundational you get. So as I go further in numbers, there's less I can say about them, because there's less patterns that I feel I can really connect them to. So there's a vagueness principle. The further you go along, the further it is in vagueness in a certain way. And so 3 is sort of the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. It's the Trinity. It's the core, the heart, and the head. And it balances the two. So the 3, with the polarity, the 3 has the Father, which is sort of embraced by the duality. And so they're all connected in what you might call sort of triangular shapes. So the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost, the core would be sort of the I guess you could say the Father from which it all comes, and it's more masculine oriented, more forward marching, and then the heart is, or it is also sort of the judicial branch, the absolute rules that kind of get set down. The heart is more embracing, more open, more connective, more space holding. And then the head is the executive. In a certain way, it's the Son. It's the newest of the 3. And that, if you look at it in an evolutionary sense from science, it's the neocortex. Again, that principle is enmeshed. It's not a perfect splitting up, but you have the reptilian brainstem, the limbic system, the neocortex, and those would be expressions of the core, the heart, and head in a certain way. And so the kind of neocortex allows for executive demand, and so the Son can create the heaven on earth that they want. And so this is, I in fractal math I've been calling this sort of industrial revolution 3-3. It's the son of the sun. It's the how can I put it? It's the attempt at the Son creating heaven on earth, but it backfires in some sense, because you need a fourth, which is developing now through these sorts of things in some regards. And I think Ken Wilbert was the first to really hammer it down a fairly concrete map, in the sense that it's useful, and that's quadratic theory, or quadrant theory. And so here you have the fourth quadrant, which was in a sense laid down in a out in the world way during the Industrial Revolution. It's sort of the techno-industrial mode, but when it's properly held, I think it's actually more of a feminine principle. So the triad, even though it's more neutral than 2, it actually the fourth. Sorry, this is so damn complicated. The fourth is a switchback in a certain regard. So, one, the I, the universal, interior experience, broadly speaking, in a certain way. Two, mutuality, connectivity, morality, and this is all in the mind realm. And then three is sort of science, objectivism, which allows for four, which is the kind of industrial complex in a certain way. But that's sort of chaos theory when expressed mentally. So, chaos theory. And so, the web is a reflection of four, in that it pluralizes information, it democratizes information, allows me to connect to you. And if we actually put the internet in our brain mind, it would be a fourth brain, where we can speak telepathically to each other to some degree, but we still maintain our autonomy, we can still maintain our mutuality, we can still maintain our objectivism. But now we have a new level of plurality of mind, where all minds are sort of accessible instantaneously to some degree through the fourth mind. So that's a new evolutionary process in the fractal numerology. So four sort of means that, where it's a pluralizing of information, a pluralizing of systems, a pluralization of things. Whereas three has that ability, that control mechanism kind of built into it. That the all-seeing eye is the kind of control mechanism. But it has that. But that's what it is. It's autonomy. When properly embodied, it's autonomy. In that I have my executor, I have my heart, I have my core, and properly expressed, they allow for true autonomy. They allow for that integration of myself as the sun. But all of these principles are always arising. So that's the thing. Even though maybe the Industrial Revolution is a good expression of three, and what we're moving into here now is a good expression of four, sort of pluralizing and so forth. There is always going to be 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3 arising moment to moment. And so 5 is hard to express. I don't know if I really understand it, but it's something to do with creativity, I think. And it would, in another way, embrace 1, 2, 3, 4. And 6 is sort of to do with vision. And so it goes. But there's, as I said, it's vagueness as you get further up in the numerological system. But 1, 2, 3, and 4 is fairly defined now, I'd say. But 1, 2, and 3 are very defined. So, and there's that embrace as you go forward. Anyway.